D. James Kennedy Ministries presents Truths That Transform.
Down through the centuries, churches have been the ones who have moved to get rid of most of the great evils of our world.
Democracy doesn't seem to work fast enough for this administration, so authoritarianism is their line for the day. So they're going to try tyranny on the state.
This is Truths That Transform.
On the other hand, we in
Thanks for joining us on Truths That Transform, a viewer-supported program. I am Frank Wright, president of D. James Kennedy Ministries, and I invite you to visit our ministry website at djkm.org, where you can find a deep library of excellent video, audio, digital, and print resources. It's all available at djkm.org. We stand at a serious crossroads in American history. In a nation founded upon religious freedom and a Christian conception of governance, we instead now see an unconstrained government seeking to dictate every aspect of our lives. Religious freedom is crushed under the onslaught of same-sex marriage. Socialism is gaining acceptance among young voters daily. And rampant gender confusion is now hailed as heroic and enshrined into law. Joining us to talk about these detours to insanity and how we can reverse course is our own John Rabe. John, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Frank. It's always a pleasure.
It's great to have you here. And I understand you're about to turn the tables on me once again.
That's right. Every so often we like to do this, but you've actually written an important new book on the topics that you just mentioned, and it's called The Road Back to Sanity. And so I wanted to ask you some questions about that because you've studied these issues and how they apply to our culture, and you focused on these as four very important, really crucial issues. What was it that spurred you to write this book and to write specifically on the four issues addressed in it?
Well, John, you don't have to wake up Einstein today to recognize that the world has seemingly lost its collective mind. And what was unthinkable even just 10 years ago is now the reigning secular orthodoxy in our culture. Mm-hmm. And not only is that orthodoxy reigning, it will brook no dissent. If you're a conscientious objector, that's just tough luck. You're going to bow the knee to the altar of government power. And all of these things together have me so concerned for the future of government of, by, and for the people. I felt like I needed to try to articulate how these things were related and how they impact the future of a free people like us.
And that's an important question because this book deals with essentially four major topics. The abuse of the concept of the separation of church and state and how that affects our religious liberty, rampant gender confusion, the encroachment of socialism, and executive overreach and government overreach. Now, those seem to be four topics that may not automatically connect to one another, but really they do. What would you say is some of the commonalities that exist between those four issues?
I was struck by how each of those four issues is a departure from common sense and rational thought. Especially the area of gender confusion might illustrate that the best because of it just standing on its head decades, generations long ideas that we've all held as something rational and common to our own existence. But not just that. Certainly these issues also are kind of a shift from rational thought to the ideological self. It's the all about me culture coming into full bloom, and I need to have these things. It's the growth in dependency on our own federal government. All of these issues tie back to individual dependency on government as it grows more and more in power. And of course, it's also tied to this crazy, we used to laugh at it, political correctness that now has become this onerous and oppressive and, you better agree with this or you're going to pay a significant price for it. And then lastly, it seems to me that a government that no longer abides by the Constitution is a government that will quickly lose its freedoms, including religious freedom. So the gospel is what's at risk here.
The government has intruded itself into every area of life, and so everything is now political. But at root, these are not political issues. These are gospel issues that now end up with a manifestation in politics.
That's exactly right, simply because the Scripture is clear where God is the one who has ordained, established, and sustains human governments. And having done so, He set boundaries, parameters in which they should operate, spheres of influence, as Kuyper once said, and that government should not transcend those boundaries and obtrude itself into these other areas. And yet it clearly has. Not to mention that God has uniquely placed us in a form of government that requires citizen participation to defend freedom. And one of the freedoms that we need to defend is our religious freedom, again, so that our heartbeat is for the gospel of Jesus Christ. If the government gains too much power, the gospel will be fettered and constrained in such a way that we'll no longer be able to freely talk about it outside of the so-called stained glass ghettos. Sure, go meet with a group of other people like yourself Sunday morning, and you can talk about these things, but you won't be able to talk about them to unbelievers or anybody else, and certainly not apply them to culture.
So these issues are all intertwined. They are all ultimately gospel issues. You're the president and CEO of D. James Kennedy Ministries. What do you see this ministry doing about these issues in this election year and in the years to come?
John, I've always subscribed to the notion that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Things done in secret, things done behind closed doors, things done by a small group of people affecting a large group of people. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. If that's true, then we need to make widely known what's happening and why these issues are important. And so D. James Kennedy Ministries is producing 4 special programs that we will not only air in our normal television programming syndication, our distribution, but also look for other opportunities to have these programs viewed by the broadest possible audience so that people can wake up and connect the dots, so to speak. We will produce and air all of them before Election Day, Lord willing, and if our supporters step up and help us. And it's our goal to speak truth to power, to speak truth into a culture that seems to have a bit of a tin ear to truth in our day.
So if people want to engage on these 4 important issues, D. James Kennedy Ministries is going to be active in that fight, and they need to stay tuned. In an age when many people are just sort of going along to get along, this ministry is going to be standing against the tide from a biblical perspective, and I think that's important. Frank, thank you for letting me jump in and take over the opening segment here, but I knew you had some important observations on these issues that I wanted to make sure we got out there. I appreciate you letting me jump in.
John, thank you for being here. You're quite welcome, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you so much and your leadership in producing the kind of programs that we need to get out to this broad audience.
No,
Thank you.
you.
Let me ask you a question. What sort of nation do you want to leave to your children and grandchildren? Are you concerned that our nation has seemingly lost its way? If you're like most of us, you might be looking around wondering what can be done to get us back on track. My friend and mentor, Dr. D. James Kennedy, issues a call to spiritual arms in the battle in which we find ourselves. In this portion of his classic message, Will the Church Forget?
The question I would ask today is, will the church forget what you and a great many thousands of others fought for, and what some gave the last full measure of devotion to defend? For the principles upon which this nation was founded, of liberty and not license, of godliness and piety and morality. This is what this nation was built upon. Will those things be forgotten? Alas, dear friends, I'm afraid that not only will the church forget them? To a large degree, the church has already forgotten them. Don Wildman a gentleman who has done an amazing job with the American Family Association, wrote about a decade ago something which I think is even more true today. He says this, quote, "Today, 4,000 innocent, precious lives of unborn babies were snuffed out, and 300,000 pulpits were silent. The networks make a mockery of Christians, the Christian faith, and Christian values with nearly every show they air. Greed, materialism, violence, sexual immorality are standard fare. Program after program, movie after movie contains anti-Christian episodes and propaganda. News articles condescendingly refer to Christians as fundamentalist right-wing, and those who speak out for the sacredness of life are extremists. And 300,000 pulpits are silent. Teenage suicide is the highest it has ever been. It's higher now than when he wrote that. Christian morality cannot be taught in the schools, but atheistic immorality can be, and 300,000 pulpits are silent. A majority of states now have lotteries. Gambling has been legalized, no longer a crime, and 300,000 pulpits are silent. Well, the church hasn't always been silent by any means. Down through the centuries, churches have been the ones who have moved to get rid of most of the great evils of our world. It was through the work of Christians and churches that slavery was eliminated from Great Britain, and 3/4 of the people in the first anti-slavery meeting in New England were Christian clergymen. No, the church was not always silent. The church spoke out on issues such as child labor laws, issues such as wives being beaten and abused, and many other such things as this. But today, that seems no longer to be the case. And I would like to turn from this congregation to do something I've never done before, and I would like to speak directly to the thousands of ministers who are watching me right now and say to you, brethren, gentlemen, God needs men who will speak out on the great issues of the day. Martin Luther said, though we be active in the battle, if we're not fighting where the battle is the hottest, we are traitors to the cause. God grant you courage. I've asked people, why do their pastors not speak out? The answer is always the same. They are afraid. Be not afraid. Christ is with you. And I believe your people will support you. Oh, that doesn't mean all of them. I will no doubt get a card or two from some of you complaining about this message. And I want you to know right now, I don't care a flip. The only thing your cards tell me is that you do not understand what the Word of God says. You don't understand what the Word of God is supposed to be accomplishing. You do not understand that you're not only to render unto God what is God's, but you're to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. And you do not understand that our whole culture is going to hell in a handbasket, and most people in the churches are doing nothing about it, and most preachers are very guardedly saying nothing about it. God have mercy upon us. Ah, dear one, Christ wants you to be a soldier for him. Pray that God will fill you with intensity to do whatever you can, to become involved, to get out of the bleachers and onto the field and become a participant in the greatest struggle in the history of the world. a struggle for goodness, a struggle for godliness, a struggle of Christ against Satan. That is the battle that we are in.
America's forced march to insanity is happening at a breathtaking pace. As Dr. Kennedy exhorted us, we need Christians and courageous pastors to stand up and speak with passion on the key moral issues of our day. We are approaching the end of the first half of 2016, as well as the end of our own fiscal year. And with a major election just a few months from now, we want to share with you the importance of speaking biblical truth on these issues and how this ministry plans to play a vital role in doing so.
Through the years, the broadcast ministry of Dr. D. James Kennedy has sought to inform and mobilize Christians on the vital issues of our day from a biblical point of view, so that we may impact our world for Christ.
I'm so glad that this ministry is continuing the legacy of Dr. Kennedy in terms of sharing truth in the public square, because really all of the policy issues, the major policy issues that we face, the reality is that there are elements of each major policy debate going on in this country, not just social issues, but also economic issues or national security issues, where biblical reasoning is right reasoning.
In this crucial election year, D. James Kennedy Ministries plans to specifically address several vital issues of our time, including the problem of executive abuse of power.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward.
There is a big issue with executive overreach in our day. We have a system of government where under the Constitution we have 3 separate branches, and the legislative branch is supposed to make the laws, the executive branch is supposed to enforce them, the judicial branch is supposed to interpret them. Right now we've got the executive branch actually making most of our laws and doing so to the detriment of the American people, locking them out of the process.
Democracy doesn't seem to work fast enough for this administration, so authoritarianism is their line for the day, so they're going to try tyranny on the states.
The ministry also plans to investigate rampant gender confusion, which has waged a war on decency and privacy through such initiatives as forced open bathroom policies.
People of North Carolina are absolutely livid that the Obama administration would attempt to violate and compromise the privacy and safety of all of our children when they're at school.
The truth is if you're born a man, you should go to the men's bathroom. If you're born a woman, you should go to the women's bathroom.
One of the central threats to freedom in our time is the misunderstanding and sometimes outright abuse of the notion of the separation of church and state.
Where we are today in America compared to our founding in terms of religious freedom it's not quite night and day, but it's getting there.
When the government takes away religious liberty, all the liberties are at stake as well. If we as citizens allow our federal government or our state governments or any person in the state to say we can remove any one of your religious liberties and we'll be okay with that, then all of our liberties, all of our rights will quickly follow that as well.
D. James Kennedy Ministries is also in production on a new special dealing with America's lurch towards socialism.
I want the American people to be voting for a vision of economic justice, of social justice, of environmental justice, of racial justice. That is the campaign we are running, and that's why we are getting the support we are.
Look, if you want to see socialism in action today around the globe, you go to Puerto Rico, or you go to Athens, Greece, or you go to Venezuela or Argentina, or you go to Detroit. I mean, Detroit was socialistic for 50 years and now it's bankrupt, just as Puerto Rico is in Argentina.
I see specials such as speaking about the danger that's posed by socialism and other issues that some people might not understand to be Christian issues per se. I think it's invaluable that this ministry is continuing Dr. Kennedy's legacy of showing how biblical wisdom pertains to how we understand and how we deal with each of those issues.
Of course, D. James Kennedy Ministries continues to build on the legacy of our founder, who continues to have a great impact on people's lives through his broadcast messages and publications.
D. James Kennedy was a great inspiration in my life. He was one of the earlier preachers that dared to speak the Word of God uncompromising.
I'm so thankful that the message of D. James Kennedy is still getting out through his television ministry and through his Bible, because he had so much to say to us. He was my mentor, actually, he didn't even know it, in helping me shape my worldview.
I believe that he gave us a biblically based worldview, a concept of how we should think as Christians, how we should engage in the culture, and he was a thought leader and really a pioneer.
I am so delighted that the legacy of Dr. Kennedy's work continues through the D. James Kennedy Ministries that go worldwide in influence and providing good content to raise up a whole new generation of faithful disciples of Christ.
We are at a watershed moment in American history. What happens in the next few months may determine our future as a free people. Will we continue down the path of runaway government, gender and sexual insanity, and socialism? Or will we turn around and find the road back to sanity? With God's help, this ministry will do everything we can to illuminate that road back. And we invite you to help us. And we have some important resources to share with you as you do. Our own Jennifer Kennedy Cassidy joins us to tell us more. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, Frank. At a time when there are enormous social pressures to conform to the new insanity, and when the full weight of the government and the mainstream media are being employed to make you get in line, it's never been more important for there to be a clear, bold, biblical proclamation of the truth. That's what D. James Kennedy Ministries is all about. We're putting together 4 special, hard-hitting television programs dealing with the most pressing moral issues facing us today. Those issues are the abuse of the so-called separation of church and state, socialism, executive overreach, and widespread gender confusion. Too many are backing down in the face of these issues, but not us. We are going to speak boldly, but we need your help to do so. This is the final weekend of our fiscal year. We need to hear from you immediately so that we can meet our financial obligations and launch into the all-important second half of this year on firm footing. As our thanks for your generous donation to the work of this ministry, we'll send you Dr. Frank Wright's powerful new book, The Road Back to Sanity, Finding Our Way Home from Cultural Delusion. Frank uncovers the falsehoods and lies behind gender confusion, socialism, executive overreach, and the destruction of religious liberty, and offers a roadmap back to cultural sanity. We also have a powerful 2 DVD or 2 CD series called Wake Up America, featuring 2 of my father's most impactful messages. We'll send them to you as our thanks for your generous donation. Simply write to us at Box 6084, Albert Lea, Minnesota, 56007. Or call toll-free 877-962-7677. Or go online at djameskennedy.org. And right now, your gift will have double the impact. Some generous friends of this ministry have established the $150,000 matching challenge, which will essentially double any gift you give up to the limit. If you give $50, we'll receive an extra $50. If you give $100, we'll receive $200. And if you give $1,000, we'll get $2,000. So please, help us at this crucial time. As our thanks, we'll send you Frank Wright's book, The Road Back to Sanity, Finding Our Way Home from Cultural Delusion, as well as the 2 DVD or 2 CD series of my father's messages called Wake Up America. Simply write to us at Box 6084, Albert Lea, Minnesota, 56007, or call toll-free 877-962-7677, or go online at djameskennedy.org.
If anyone wishes to doubt that we are a nation engulfed by insanity, take a look at the Obama administration's recent edict on school bathrooms. Of course, under adherence to the actual American Constitution, the president would have nothing to say whatsoever about public schools, let alone their restrooms. But in an era of executive overreach and rampant gender confusion, we perhaps should not be surprised. According to the Obama administration, with all of its deep reflection upon the past 15 minutes of fashionable history, public schools will now be required to allow students to use the bathroom and locker room facilities of their own chosen gender, rather than according to their biological sex. Schools that refuse to adhere to this unilateral mandate will be subject to the loss of federal funding. Needless to say, this is manifestly absurd, but it is an absurdity codified into binding guidelines and enforced by federal regulators. For decades now, many Christian parents have justified sending their children to public schools as a sort of mission field, even as evidence piled up that they were being fed a steady diet of anti-theistic indoctrination. Now these parents face the very real likelihood that their daughters on the soccer or softball team might be showering and dressing with biological males who claim to identify as female. If Christian parents are willing, even now, to continue participating in such systematic child endangerment, one has to wonder what could ever possibly constitute a bridge too far. When the government calls good evil and evil good and uses its power to enforce it, Christians have an obligation to stand opposed to it. The risks of handing our children over to secular indoctrination have always been high, but we now are talking about the health, welfare, and personal safety of those least able to defend themselves. Clearly, we have come to a time for choosing. It is also a time for Christians to stand for truth, both in action as well as words. Raising our children is part of our stewardship responsibility before God Himself. We dare not neglect our duty to protect them, no matter what unpopularity we may face as a result. I'm Frank Wright. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Truths That Transform. We'll see you next time.
Next week on Truths That Transform.
There has been a revival of interest in the founding of this country and what it was intended to be and what it can be again.
Well, the founders were very careful to have three separate, different, distinct branches of government, and they didn't even make the executive the strongest one.
That's next week. Today's program is available on DVD for your gift to this ministry of any amount. Please call, write, or log on to our website today. This has been a production of D. James Kennedy Ministries.